Today, we're gonna super clean this front windshield using 3 simple steps and 3 products you probably already have. But we're not gonna stop there. We're gonna take it up another notch and hyper clean it. The first step and first product we're gonna be using today is a bucket of soapy water. We're gonna wash that front windshield so it's nice and clean. The second step and second product is a clay bar like this one. We're gonna take that clay bar and go over the entire windshield again, removing any leftover tree sap, bug guts, road grime, or anything like that. And the third step, well, it's not for the faint of heart, and you're gonna have to stay tuned for that one. Now, what's the point? Why would we want to take the extra steps to super clean or hyper clean our windshield? Well, especially now during the rainy and snow season, we want windshield wipers that actually work. You know what I'm talking about. A few sprinkles start hitting your windshield, you get excited, turn on those windshield wipers, only to hear them go right over that windshield. Not fun. So why does that happen? Well, it could be that your windshield wipers are just plain old and need replacing. But it could also be that even though your windshield may look clean, there is actually a lot of road debris, oils, and greases on that windshield, causing the windshield wiper to skip. So you may want to hyper clean your windshield as sort of a regular maintenance item. But on top of that, you may want to do what I'm going to be doing, which is preparing the windshield for a coating called Rain-X. Rain-X is no secret. It's been around forever. We've all seen the videos of how well it repels water off of your windshield. And I'm going to use this opportunity to hyper clean my front windshield and prepare it for its first ever layer of Rain-X. But that's not all. I have this early bottle of Rain-X from about 1992, and we're going to compare the two head to head. So if you want to see a head-to-head Rain-X challenge with a 30-year-old bottle of Rain-X versus one I just bought yesterday, stay tuned to One Road and the very next video I put out. For now, let's get to hyper cleaning my front windshield. As I mentioned, the first step is to wash the front windshield with a good quality dish soap. So I'll go ahead and pour some in the bucket. Then I'll fill it with some warm water. We're gonna take this warm water and a microfiber towel and just start washing the windshield. Now, I'm gonna give you 3 special tips throughout this video. And tip number 1 is gonna happen right now. And that is use a really good quality microfiber towel to reduce any sort of possibility of scratching the glass with the dirt as you clean it, because there is microscopic rocks that makes up the dirt on our windshield. And if we just use a regular paper towel or a towel or something like that, sometimes that dirt can get in there and just start scratching this glass as you rub the towel over it. I've now thoroughly washed the windshield, and I'm gonna rinse it off with some more hot water. Front windshield is now clean. It's not super clean or hyper clean, just clean. This is good enough for most people. But if you're like me and want to take it to the next level, let's super clean it. For that, I'm going to use a piece of this clay bar. You definitely don't have to use the whole thing. Just rip some off, knead it in your hand to make it nice and pliable. Okay, I have my piece of clay bar here, and I'm just going to start rubbing it on the glass. I'm not going to press super hard and scrub or anything, because we have to remember there still could be little microscopic rocks or dirt on the windshield. And you should be able to feel it being very smooth on this windshield. Anytime it starts to grab, it's probably picking something up off of that windshield, but you just want to make sure and you go over the entire thing. And this second step is really going to remove anything that was left over from the initial wash with the soap. You can always take a peek at the bottom of the clay bar and see if it's dirty. That would indicate that your windshield is still dirty, still has things on it that need to be removed. Now, if you do find it getting dirty, you can always fold it over on itself, fold it again, and flatten it back out and keep using it. You may have noticed it's raining a bit as I do this, and I'm going to use that to my advantage because we do want to keep that clay bar wet. Anytime you use a clay bar, it needs to be properly lubricated. So thankfully, I have the rain to do it for me. And this really leads me into special tip number 2, which is make sure you do this on a cool, maybe overcast day. You don't want to do it in the direct sunlight because the glass will be hot. The water will dry, leaving water spots. You want to make sure that the glass is nice and cool to the touch, and basically just not a super hot day out. And feeling the glass with my bare hand, I can feel that it is extremely smooth. There's nothing that I can feel with my own skin that is left behind, no grit, no grime, nothing like that. At this point, step 2 is done. We've clay barred the entire front windshield, and now I'm gonna go back to that microfiber, that good quality microfiber, and dry off the windshield. So the first step was a clean windshield. This second step is a super clean windshield. And now we are about to take it a step further, which is hyper clean. And that third product we're gonna use to hyper clean this windshield is, that's right, steel wool. I told you this wasn't for the faint of heart. In particular, we're using Quad Zero steel wool, which is the finest and softest steel wool you can find. At this point, this step is just extra. That clay bar did a pretty darn good job at removing any remaining road debris, but I'm gonna take it a step further and polish the glass with this steel wool. Now guys, when I say not for the faint of heart, what I'm talking about is this isn't for everybody. Some people are going to completely disagree with using steel wool on glass. Now, I have already tested it on a small, inconspicuous area of glass on my truck, and I did not see any scratches. I've done my own research and figured out that this should not, I'm not saying it won't, but it should not scratch the glass. The other part of this whole process is the fact that I've already super cleaned the windshield. So that steel wool isn't going to pick up some little rock or piece of sand or something like that and start grinding it into the glass. Now the windshield is super clean. So that steel wool should just get any remaining debris on that glass and take it off. So like I said, not for the faint of heart, not even really needed, but you know me, if you've been following One Road, I like to take things much farther than they need to be. So definitely, absolutely do your own research, your own due diligence, and come to your own conclusions. This is not for everybody, but I am gonna try it out. And with this fresh piece of steel wool and a completely dry windshield, I'm gonna start very softly just buffing the glass. What I'm really trying to do is get the very, very last bit of microscopic debris, whether it's tree sap or road grime, anything like that, and I'm just trying to pull it off of this glass. Now I can tell you right now that this steel wool definitely feels very, very slick and very smooth. It's not catching on anything. It doesn't feel like it's scratching the glass. It just feels really, really smooth. It doesn't feel like steel wool. It just feels like a nice soft cloth. Now it is really interesting going through this process, especially on an older vehicle like mine. This is a 1995 GMC Suburban, so fairly old, and I'm pretty sure this is the original windshield. And after all these years looking at this thing, though from a distance it looks like it's in good shape, there is a lot of rock chips, a lot of little microscopic scratches, and some of those scratches look like people trying to wash the windshield, seeing a little bug or something like that, and scrubbing it into the glass. I do also see some delamination right here around the edges of the window all the way around, so eventually this front windshield is gonna have to be replaced. All right, and here is what that final result looks like. This is the hyper cleaned front windshield. You guys saw what this front windshield looked like before I started, and now it is hyper cleaned. The difference is simply incredible, and I'm pretty sure this front windshield has never been this clean, even from the factory. It is night now, and luckily I have these lights so I can show off the final product. I started this process much earlier in the day. There was plenty of light out. We dealt with rain in all kinds of situations. I've been working hard all day for you guys. So I'm hoping that with these lights, you can still tell the incredible difference between the state of the glass before and now after it's been hyper cleaned. The truck's back in the shop with its recent hyper cleaned window, and I think it's about time to give that third and final special tip. And that is, after doing a super clean or hyper clean like I've done here, you can't just go and lay your windshield wipers back on the windshield. You have to give those things some love as well. Whether you just wipe them down with a rag or take something a little more abrasive and clean that rubber from the windshield wipers, you definitely want to do that before you put them down on the windshield, because those windshield wipers over time gather a lot of dirt, a lot of that same road debris, and if you were to just put those back down on your windshield, well, all that dirt is then just going to be transferred back on the windshield, and it's going to scratch it up. So let's clean those now. And you can do this in various ways. What I'm gonna do is take that original steel wool pad that I used to buff the front windshield, and I'm just gonna take this and use it to buff this rubber. What this should be doing is taking off not only any of that road grime, but also taking off maybe a little bit of the actual rubber, the dried out rubber, the stuff that I don't really want on there that's not really helping the wiping of the water from the windshield. And after doing that for just a little bit, I can see this pad is a bit darker here where I was rubbing the black rubber, and that's hopefully indicating, just as I thought, that some of the dried out rubber is now coming off and maybe revealing nice new fresh rubber underneath. Well, I've quickly realized that steel wool is probably not the best material to be using to be cleaning the windshield wiper blades, not because it doesn't do a good job on the rubber, but because the actual structure of the blade is catching some of that steel wool and holding on to it. So I'm gonna take these wiper blades off and actually go wash them before I get back to using them. I already took the one off from the passenger side. All right, all cleaned, inspected, no steel wool left. There we go. I'm sorry, but after all this, I have to put a little Rain-X on this windshield just to test it out. My very next video is going to be all about Rain-X, the 30-year-old Rain-X versus the Rain-X of today, and maybe another product. But right now, after all this, after everything I've gone through to hyper clean this windshield, I want to put a little bit of Rain-X right here in this square and just see what it's like, because I've never used Rain-X before. So I'm really excited about this. Okay, for this little sample, I'm gonna use the brand new bottle of Rain-X. This is Rain-X Original. It's a 3.5 ounce bottle. That should be enough, a couple drips there. You can see it on the towel here. I just want to put it on this area right here where I taped it. It says to buff it on, basically. Get it on there, let it dry to a haze. Evenly coated, I can see. All right, and hopefully you can see that haze that's forming on the glass as the Rain-X dries. That's what we want. As soon as we can see that it's dried to a haze, I can buff it off. And there we are. I'm gonna take a new rag and just buff this out till the glass is crystal clear, it says. All right, pro tip, I'm taking the wet microfiber that I was using to dry the glass initially to buff it off. And now I have the dry microfiber towel that I was using to do the final dry on the windshield. And I'm using this to dry off and fully buff off the remaining Rain-X. Now what's interesting is you can barely see it, but I can see the tape line of where the Rain-X was applied and not applied. So that's interesting. Wow, I'm not seeing any difference with the Rain-X versus not Rain-X. That's really interesting. Wow, I'm not seeing any difference with the Rain-X versus not Rain-X. Well, that was really interesting. I just completed 2 tests, one with a bucket, so just a full sheet of water on the front windshield, and one with a rain simulation. And in both of those tests, I didn't see a single bit of difference between the little test patch of Rain-X and everywhere else on the windshield. So there's either one of 2 things going on. One, the Rain-X doesn't work. I followed the directions the best I could, the best that anybody would had they bought the product, followed the directions, and applied it. But I don't think that's the case. I think what I'm suspecting, my hypothesis on what is going on, is that I super hyper cleaned this windshield so good that it's all performing the same. Now that is my hypothesis. I could be completely way off, but a lot of the water, when you look up close, it's beading really well on this front windshield. So the front windshield may just be very, very clean, very polished, to where the application of Rain-X in one little test patch, you can't really tell a difference, because the rest of the windshield is performing the same. So I don't know. What I will tell you though is my very next video after this one that you're watching now is going to be featuring Rain-X. Like I showed you in the beginning, we're going to be testing a bottle from 1992 thereabouts and a bottle from today. And then we're going to test another product alongside those two and see if that would work just as well. So I can't wait for that one. Well, I do hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe you've learned something from it. Maybe you've even learned what not to do. I gotta say, even though I did it, that steel wool is scary. So I know I've said it multiple times in the video, but it is not recommended for the average user. And make sure you test in an inconspicuous spot. You do your own research, come to your own conclusions, you know, all that good stuff, before you go and try steel wool on your glass. For me, it seemed to work out just fine. I didn't put any scratches in the front windshield that weren't already there. And speaking of those micro scratches, I know some of you might be thinking that I just did that with the steel wool. I didn't. I knew those micro scratches were there. I had seen them back when I first bought this vehicle. It just took till now to really super clean, hyper clean this windshield to see up close and personal just how many micro scratches were there. They're from the previous owner, not from me. Somebody, I don't know if it was him or if he took this thing to get washed somewhere, somebody was using a dirty rag to clean that front windshield. And so I now have a bunch of micro scratches, but it does look like it's the original front windshield, which means I probably need to get it replaced anyway. So today I've hyper cleaned my front windshield and I even got to put a test patch of Rain-X on there and see how that worked. So please don't forget, if you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber and you've watched this far, consider subscribing. I'm Jimmy for One Road here on YouTube, and I will see you in the next one.